I wiped down table 6 for the 3rd time tonight. The vinegar smell of the cleaning solution sharp in my nostrils. The clock above the kitchen door read 9:47 p.m., and the Rosewood Diner was experiencing what Kayla liked to call a ghost shift. Those rare November evenings when the usual dinner crowd simply didn't materialize. Only 4 tables occupied in a space designed for 40. "You're going to wear a hole in that laminate if you keep scrubbing," Kayla said, appearing at my elbow with a coffee pot in one hand and her phone in the other. Her blonde hair was escaping its ponytail in wispy strands that framed her face. "Seriously, Hannah, it's clean. It's been clean since the last 3 times you wiped it." I set the rag down, realizing my hands were trembling slightly. 2 years of working here, and I still couldn't sit still during slow shifts. The silence made room for thoughts I'd spent those same 2 years trying to outrun. "Sorry, just restless." "You're always restless." She poured herself a cup of the coffee that had been sitting on the burner since 6. "But tonight you're extra restless. What's going on in that head of yours?" Before I could answer, the bell above the entrance chimed. Kayla and I both turned toward the door, and the automatic greeting died in my throat. 3 men entered, and they transformed the atmosphere of the diner as completely as if they'd flipped a switch. The first 2 wore dark jackets despite the relative warmth of the evening, their eyes scanning the restaurant with a professional wariness that made my stomach clench. But it was the 3rd man who commanded attention. He stood at least 6 feet tall, perhaps a bit more, with black hair precisely styled, and a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Even from across the room, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the commanding set of his shoulders. He didn't look around with the casual curiosity of a normal customer. His dark eyes assessed the space with the kind of focus that suggested he was cataloging exits, potential threats, and every person present. "Oh no," Kayla whispered beside me, her voice suddenly tight. "Oh no. What? Who is he?" "That's Lucas Valentasi." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard. "He owns half the buildings in this neighborhood, maybe more than half. You do not want to be anywhere near him, Hannah." But the hostess, Sarah, was already leading them toward my section. Of course. Of the 4 occupied tables, 3 were in Kayla's section, which meant mine was the obvious choice for a party of 3 wanting privacy. "I'll take them," Kayla said quickly. "I'll tell Sarah there was a mix-up. It's fine. They're just customers." The words came out steadier than I felt. Kayla's expression said she wanted to argue, but Sarah was already gesturing toward a corner booth, and the man, Lucas Valentasi, was settling into it with his back to the wall, his 2 companions taking positions that gave them clear views of both the entrance and the kitchen door. I picked up 3 menus and approached the table, hyper-aware of my scuffed sneakers and the coffee stain on my black apron that I'd tried and failed to wash out yesterday. Lucas Valentasi didn't glance up as I approached. He was studying his phone, his expression unreadable. "Good evening. Can I start you gentlemen with something to drink?" One of the companions ordered water. The other asked for coffee, black. Lucas still hadn't looked up from his phone. I waited, pen hovering over my order pad. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, then excruciating. Finally, the companion who'd ordered coffee cleared his throat softly. "Sir?" Lucas lifted his eyes from the screen, and I felt the impact of his gaze like a physical thing. His eyes were a deep brown, almost black in the diner's lighting, and they held an intensity that made me want to step back. But I held my ground, keeping my expression professionally neutral. "Scotch," he said. His voice was low, measured, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Neat. We don't serve hard alcohol, sir. Beer and wine only." Something flickered across his face. Not quite annoyance, not quite amusement. "Water, then." I wrote it down, though I didn't need to. 3 waters, 1 coffee. "I'll be right back with those." Turning away felt like breaking eye contact with a predator. I could feel him watching me as I walked to the beverage station, my shoulders tight with awareness. Kayla intercepted me before I could pour the coffee. "Are you insane? Do you know who that is?" "You already told me." "Lucas Valentasi. He owns buildings. He owns everything, Hannah. Everything. And people don't just avoid him because he's rich." She glanced over her shoulder toward the booth, then back at me. "There are rumors." Really bad rumors about what he actually does. I filled the coffee cup, added 3 glasses of water to a tray. He's a customer, Kayla. That's all I need to know. You're impossible, she muttered. But she stepped aside to let me pass. When I returned to the booth, Lucas was speaking in low tones to one of his companions, who nodded and stood up, heading toward the restroom. I distributed the drinks, setting Lucas's water down last. As I placed it on the table, my grandmother's locket, the one I'd worn every single day for the past 2 years, chose that exact moment to slip from beneath my collar where I'd tucked it. I felt the chain catch, then release. The locket tumbled forward, and I grabbed for it instinctively, but my fingers only managed to knock it further away. It bounced once on the edge of the table and landed directly on the placemat in front of Lucas Valentasi. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching across to retrieve it. His hand closed around it first. Not aggressively, but with absolute finality. His fingers curled around the small silver oval, and he lifted it, examining it with the same focused attention he'd given the restaurant when he first entered. "That's mine," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Please." He didn't respond. Instead, with deliberate slowness, he opened the locket. I watched his expression change. It was subtle, a tightening around his eyes, a muscle jumping in his jaw. But on a face as controlled as his, those small shifts felt seismic. He stared at the photograph inside for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. When he finally looked up at me, something in those dark eyes had transformed into something cold and dangerous. "Where did you get this?" The question was quiet, but it cut through the ambient noise of the diner like a blade. At the other table in my section, an elderly couple looked over, frowning. At the counter, Kayla had gone very still. "It's mine," I repeated, fighting to keep my voice steady. "A friend gave it to me. Now please, I need it back. Sit down." "I'm working, I can't." "Sit down." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The authority in those 2 words was absolute, brooking no argument. My legs folded before I'd consciously decided to obey, lowering me into the booth across from him. The vinyl was cold through my thin work pants. Lucas set the locket on the table between us, still open. The photograph inside was one I'd looked at 1,000 times. Michael, smiling at the camera, his light brown hair slightly windblown, his eyes crinkled at the corners with genuine happiness. It had been taken on one of our rare day trips to Cape Cod, back when I'd still believed that our relationship was real, that he was who he claimed to be. "How do you know my brother?" The words hit me like ice water. Brother. Michael had mentioned a brother. Mentioned him often, actually, though always vaguely. An older sibling who'd stayed in Chicago when Michael came to Boston for school. Someone important. Someone he both admired and seemed slightly afraid of. I'd never imagined I'd meet him. I'd certainly never imagined meeting him like this. "Michael," I managed. "Michael is your brother." Was. Lucas's correction was sharp. He's been dead for 2 years. So I'll ask again. How do you know him, and where did you get his photograph? Dead. The word ricocheted around my skull. 2 years. That was exactly when Michael had disappeared, when he'd stopped answering my calls and texts, when I'd shown up at his apartment to find it empty. Cleared out, as if he'd never existed at all. "He's not dead," I heard myself saying. "He just left. He disappeared, but he's not. He's dead." Then Lucas reached into his jacket. The movement made me flinch, but he only pulled out a phone. He swiped through it with quick, precise movements, then turned the screen toward me. The photograph showed Michael, older than in my locket, his face harder somehow, but unmistakably him. He wore a dark suit and stood next to a man who I now recognized as a younger version of the person sitting across from me. They were at some kind of formal event, both unsmiling, both radiating the same kind of controlled power. "This was taken 3 months before he died," Lucas said. "And this," he swiped again. Another photo appeared. This one of what looked like a funeral. Rows of people in black, a closed casket surrounded by elaborate flower arrangements. This was his funeral. 200 people attended. You weren't one of them. The diner spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table, my fingernails digging into the laminate. "That's impossible. He was a student. He was studying architecture. He was..." He was a member of my organization. Lucas put the phone away. He worked for the family business. He was never a student, Miss Collins. Hannah Collins. The answer came automatically. Miss Collins. He leaned forward slightly, and I became acutely aware that his two companions had repositioned themselves. One stood near the entrance now. The other had returned from the restroom and stood by the kitchen door, blocking exits. I'm going to need you to tell me everything about your relationship with Michael. How you met, how long you were together, what he told you about his life, his work, his family, everything. I don't understand. If he's really dead, if he's been dead for 2 years, then why does it matter? Because I've spent 2 years trying to understand every aspect of my brother's life before he died. Because he kept secrets that got him killed. And because you, his eyes dropped to the locket again. You're wearing his photograph around your neck like a talisman. That suggests you mattered to him. Which means I need to know who you are and why he never mentioned you. At the counter, Kayla had her phone out. She was probably calling someone, maybe the police, though I suspected they wouldn't help much against a man like Lucas Valentasi. I need to work, I said, trying to inject firmness into my voice. My shift doesn't end until 11. You can't just... Your shift is over. He raised his hand, and the companion by the door immediately walked to the counter, speaking quietly to Sarah. She nodded vigorously, her face pale. You're going to come with me to somewhere we can talk privately. You're going to answer my questions. And then, if I believe you, I might let you go home. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but something in his stillness became more pronounced, more dangerous. You won't refuse. It wasn't a threat, exactly. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered with the casual certainty of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. Kayla appeared at the end of the booth, her face flushed. Hannah, you don't have to go anywhere. I called. It's fine, Kayla. I forced the words out. It's okay. I'll call you later. Hannah, please. I met her eyes, trying to convey both reassurance and desperate hope that she'd follow through on whatever call she'd been making. I'll be fine. She didn't look convinced, but one of Lucas's men, the one who'd been standing by the kitchen, moved toward her with deliberate intent. She backed away, her hands raised. Lucas stood, buttoning his suit jacket in one fluid motion. He picked up my locket from the table, holding it out toward me. When I reached for it, his fingers closed around mine, trapping them around the silver oval. Don't run, he said softly. Don't scream. Don't make this difficult. Do you understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good. He released my hand, and I fumbled the locket back around my neck with shaking fingers. Let's go. The walk to the door felt endless. I could feel every eye in the diner following us. The elderly couple, the lone man at table 12, Sarah behind the hostess stand, and Kayla, who looked like she was torn between running after me and calling for help. The November air outside hit my face like a slap after the overheated interior of the diner. November in Chicago could be brutal, and tonight carried the metallic scent of approaching rain. A black SUV waited at the curb, its engine running. Lucas opened the rear door and gestured for me to enter. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to run, but his men were right behind us, and something in Lucas's eyes told me that running would be both futile and potentially dangerous. I climbed into the vehicle. Lucas slid in beside me, maintaining a careful distance but close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody with notes of cedar. The door closed with an expensive, final-sounding thud. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched through the tinted windows as Kayla ran out onto the sidewalk, her phone pressed to her ear. Then the rain started, sudden and heavy, and within seconds she was just a blur of motion, swallowed by the downpour in the distance. Lucas said nothing during the drive, his attention fixed on his phone. I tried to note landmarks, to memorize the route we were taking, but the rain and the tinted windows made everything outside a shapeless dark mass punctuated by streetlights. We drove for perhaps 15 minutes before pulling into an underground parking garage. The SUV descended 3 levels before stopping in a private bay marked with a placard that read, Reserved, Valentasi. This way, Lucas said, climbing out and waiting for me to follow. He led me to a private elevator, one that required a key card to access. The doors opened immediately, revealing an interior paneled in dark wood and brass. As we ascended, I caught my reflection in the polished surface. Pale face, wide eyes, damp hair where the rain had caught me during the seconds between the diner door and the vehicle. I looked terrified. I was terrified. The elevator opened into a hallway carpeted in deep burgundy. Lucas walked ahead, his stride confident, and stopped at a heavy wooden door at the end. Another key card, another immediate response to his access. The space beyond was an office, but nothing like any office I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago, the lights of the buildings creating a glittering cityscape beyond the rain-streaked glass. The furniture was sleek and dark, the lighting subtle and carefully placed. It was the office of someone who valued both power and privacy. Lucas closed the door behind us, and I heard the distinct click of a lock engaging. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a leather chair positioned in front of a massive desk, "and start talking." The leather chair was cold against my back, but I barely registered it. My entire focus was on the man settling behind the massive desk across from me, his movements precise and controlled. Lucas Valentasi didn't rush. He removed his suit jacket, hanging it on a wooden stand near the window, then rolled up his sleeves with deliberate care. The gesture revealed forearms corded with muscle, and a watch that probably cost more than everything I owned. "Start from the beginning," he said, his voice calm but leaving no room for negotiation. "How did you meet my brother?" My throat felt tight. "At Boston University. I was 25, finishing my degree in graphic design. He was in the coffee shop where I studied every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. We kept running into each other. He said he was studying architecture. When was this? 4 years ago. October. The memory felt surreal now, colored by everything I'd just learned. He spilled coffee on my laptop, apologized for 20 minutes straight, insisted on buying me dinner to make up for it. Lucas's expression didn't change, but he pulled a leather notebook from his desk drawer and began writing. "And you believed he was a student. Why wouldn't I? He had textbooks. He complained about professors. He showed me his projects, building designs, structural analyses." My hands clenched in my lap. It all seemed real. It was real. Lucas looked up from his notes. Michael did study architecture. For 3 months, his first semester at Boston University. Then our father had a heart attack, and Michael came back to Chicago to help with the family business. But he kept the apartment in Boston, used it as a cover. He even audited a night studio once a semester to keep the lie breathing, bringing home graded sketches he never filed. The words landed like blows. A cover for what? For the life he actually lived. The one you knew nothing about. I wanted to argue, to defend the relationship I'd thought we had. But the evidence against me was overwhelming. 2 years of believing Michael had simply abandoned me, and now learning he'd been dead the entire time. The grief that washed through me was complicated, tangled with anger and humiliation. "Tell me about your relationship. How often did you see him?" 2 or 3 times a week usually. He'd come to Boston, or sometimes I'd visit him. We'd go to restaurants, museums, normal places. He was always careful about pictures, though. Said he was private, didn't like social media, because he couldn't risk you discovering who he really was. Lucas set down his pen. "Did he ever talk about his family? About Chicago?" "Sometimes. He mentioned an older brother who worked in real estate. Said you were close, but that you had very different approaches to life." I swallowed hard. "He made you sound boring, actually, like some corporate drone." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Lucas's face. "Corporate drone. That's creative." He leaned back in his chair. "What else did he tell you about me? That you were overprotective. That you worried too much. That he wished you could just let him live his own life." The irony of those words hit me hard now. He said he'd introduce us someday after he graduated. After he graduated from a university he hadn't attended in 3 years. Lucas's tone was flat. "Did he ever give you anything? Gifts, jewelry, anything unusual?" "The locket. That's it. He said it was a picture of him when he was younger, before life got complicated. I touched it through my shirt. I wore it every day after he disappeared. It was all I had left." "Show me." With trembling fingers, I pulled out the locket and opened it. Lucas came around the desk, studying the photo with an expression I couldn't read. Up close, he smelled like expensive cologne and something sharper. Coffee, maybe. Or the leather of his office. This was taken 6 months before he died. He was 28. Lucas touched the edge of the photo with one finger. The gesture surprisingly gentle. He gave this to you when? 3 months before he left. He said he wanted me to remember him the way he really was, not the stressed version I usually saw. My voice cracked. I thought it was romantic. Now I realize he was preparing me for something. Lucas straightened, moving back behind his desk. He knew the life he was living was dangerous. Giving you that photo, keeping you separate from his real world. He was trying to protect you. By lying to me for 2 years? Yes. No apology in his tone. Just statement of fact. Michael made a lot of mistakes. But keeping you ignorant of what he did was probably the smartest choice he made. The moment you knew, you became a liability. A target. The word target made my stomach clench. I still don't understand why he died. You said it was an ambush. Ambush by who? The Albanian Mafia. They've been at war with my family for years over territory in Chicago. Lucas pulled out his phone, swiped through it, then turned it toward me again. This image showed Michael in what looked like a security camera still, wearing tactical gear, a gun visible at his hip. This was taken the night he died. He was investigating a warehouse we suspected the Albanians were using for weapons storage. I stared at the image, trying to reconcile this armed, dangerous-looking man with the Michael who'd made me laugh over terrible comedy movies and cooked me breakfast on Sunday mornings. He went alone, against direct orders. Lucas put the phone away. He wanted to prove himself, to show he could handle important operations without supervision. Instead, they were waiting for him. 5 men. He killed 2 before they got him. The clinical way he described it made my head spin. How can you talk about it like that? Like it's just a business transaction gone wrong? Because that's what it was. Lucas's voice hardened. Sentiment doesn't bring people back, Miss Collins. Cold analysis of mistakes does prevent future deaths. Michael died because he was impulsive, and because someone in our organization told the Albanians where he'd be. I've spent 2 years trying to identify that traitor. Traitor. Ambush. Killed. The language of violence had invaded my understanding of someone I'd thought I loved. I need to use the bathroom, I said abruptly. My stomach was churning, and I could taste bile at the back of my throat. Lucas studied me for a moment, then gestured toward a door on the left side of the office. Through there, I made it to the small, elegant bathroom, just in time to vomit into the toilet. Everything from dinner came up, along with what felt like 2 years of accumulated grief and confusion. When I was finally empty, I rinsed my mouth at the sink, avoiding my reflection in the mirror. I didn't want to see what I looked like right now. When I emerged, Lucas was pouring water into a glass from a bottle on his desk. He handed it to me without comment, and I accepted it, grateful, despite everything. Sit. I sat, sipping the water carefully. My hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a strange numbness that felt almost worse. I need to know everything Michael told you about his schedule, his routine, where he went, who he mentioned seeing, any names that came up. Why? He's dead. What difference does it make now? Because understanding his last months helps me understand who betrayed him, and because... Lucas paused, something shifting in his expression. Because you're the only person who knew a side of Michael that I never saw. My brother was reserved, guarded. He didn't let people close. But he let you close. That means something. The admission surprised me. For the first time since entering this office, Lucas seemed less like an interrogator and more like someone who'd lost somebody important. He talked about opening his own firm someday, I said quietly. Architecture, like he'd supposedly been studying. He had sketches, plans for a small practice focused on sustainable design. He showed me drawings of buildings he wanted to create. I paused. Were those real? Or was that another lie? They were real. Michael did love architecture. Before our father pulled him into the business, that's what he wanted to do with his life. Lucas's jaw tightened. I tried to tell him he didn't have to stay, that he could leave if he wanted, but he felt obligated, felt like he owed the family. And it killed him? Yes. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the windows behind Lucas, I could see the sky beginning to lighten. That pre-dawn gray that meant night was ending. I'd been here for hours. Did Michael ever mention travel plans? Places he needed to go? I tried to remember. He went to New York a few times, said he had family business there, and once he went to Miami for a week. He was vague about why. He was setting up new supply routes. At my confused look, Lucas clarified. The family business isn't just real estate, Miss Collins. We import goods, some legal, some not. You mean you're criminals? I mean, we operate in gray areas that people like you don't usually have to think about. He said it without shame or defensiveness. Michael was learning those operations. He was good at the logistics, terrible at the violence. But he still died violently. Yes, my head ached. My throat burned from vomiting. And I was sitting across from a man who'd just casually admitted to running some kind of criminal empire, discussing the death of his brother like it was a case study. I want to go home, I said. You can't. The words were delivered calmly, but they hit me like a slap. What? I can't let you go until I verify something. Lucas pulled out his phone again, typed rapidly. I need to check whether the Albanians had any surveillance on Michael during the time you were together. If they documented his relationship with you, then you're in danger. That's insane. It's been 2 years. Why would they care about me now? Because vengeance doesn't have an expiration date. And because if they know you existed, they might think you have information about Michael's operations. Information they could use against my family. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. He set his phone on the desk. Right now, you're a potential asset to them or a potential weapon against us. Either way, you're not safe walking around Chicago without protection. Fear spiked through my numbness. So what? You're keeping me prisoner? I'm keeping you alive. Lucas stood, moving to the window. The growing dawn light cast him in silhouette. You'll stay in a secure location while I investigate. A few days at most. If the Albanians don't have records of you, you can go back to your normal life. If they do, he paused. Then we'll need to discuss long-term arrangements. I have a job. A life. People who'll worry about me. Your friend Kayla, yes. I'll allow you to call her once you're settled. She can bring you clothes and anything else you need. He turned back to face me. But you'll do it from a secure line, and you won't tell her where you are. She'll call the police. Let her. The police won't interfere with family business. Not in my territory. He said it with absolute confidence, and I believed him. You need to understand something, Miss Collins. The world Michael lived in, the world I live in, doesn't follow the same rules as yours. If you're connected to us now, those rules apply to you too. I didn't ask for this connection. Neither did Michael. Neither did I. But here we are. Lucas returned to his desk, pulled a card from his drawer. This is the number for the apartment where you'll stay. It's secure, monitored. Nobody can get to you there. I'll have food delivered. Anything you need. But you don't leave without my permission. I took the card with numb fingers. And if I refuse, you won't. Not a threat. Just certainty. Because despite your anger, despite feeling betrayed, you're smart. You survived 2 years thinking Michael abandoned you. You rebuilt your life from nothing. That takes intelligence and strength. And intelligent, strong people know when they're out of their depth. He was right, and I hated him for it. Lucas pressed a button on his desk phone. Bring the car around. We're taking Miss Collins to the north location. A voice crackled back confirmation. One more thing, I said. Show me proof. Real proof that Michael is dead. Without hesitation, Lucas opened a drawer and withdrew a folder. He slid it across the desk to me. This is his death certificate. This is the police report from the scene. These are photos from his funeral. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The death certificate was official, embossed with seals, dated exactly 2 years ago, to the day Michael had stopped answering my calls. The police report listed cause of death as multiple gunshot wounds. And the photos. Rows of people in black. A casket surrounded by flowers. A gravestone with Michael Valentasi carved into marble. Can I keep one? My voice cracked. A photo from the funeral? Lucas reached into the folder and pulled out a picture of the gravestone. Take this. You deserve to know where he's buried. It's in Oakwood Cemetery, Section 12. I clutched the photo. This tangible proof that Michael was really gone. The grief that crashed over me felt different now. Not the confused, angry sadness of abandonment, but the clean, sharp pain of permanent loss. I loved him, I whispered. Even now, knowing he lied, I still loved who I thought he was. He loved you too. Lucas's voice was gentler than I'd heard it all night. He told me once, near the end. Said he'd met someone who made him want to be better than what our family made him. He didn't tell me your name, didn't give me details, but I remember how he looked when he said it. Hopeful, like he actually believed he could leave all this behind. Lucas paused. He was wrong, obviously, but for a while, you gave him hope. That's worth something. A knock at the door interrupted whatever I might have said in response. One of Lucas's men entered. "Car's ready, sir." "Thank you." Lucas pulled his jacket back on, smoothed down his sleeves. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I know this isn't what you wanted tonight, Miss Collins, but you're safer with me than out there on your own. Trust that, if you can't trust anything else." I stood on unsteady legs, still clutching the photo of Michael's grave. "Will you tell me what you find? About whether I'm in danger?" "Yes." No hesitation. "I don't lie to people under my protection. You'll know everything I know as soon as I know it." It wasn't much, but it was something to hold on to as I followed him out of the office, into the elevator, down to the underground parking where another black SUV waited. The same driver from before opened the door, his face professionally blank. This time when I climbed into the vehicle, Lucas didn't join me. He leaned against the doorframe, meeting my eyes one last time. "Get some rest. Someone will bring you breakfast in a few hours. And Miss Collins? I am sorry. About Michael. About dragging you into this. I'm sorry." Then he closed the door, and the SUV pulled away, carrying me toward whatever secure location he'd arranged. Through the tinted windows, I watched the city transform in the early morning light. Familiar streets taking on unfamiliar shadows. The Chicago I thought I knew revealing itself as something more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. I pressed the photo of Michael's grave against my chest, and finally allowed myself to cry. 2 days in the penthouse felt like 2 weeks. The space was beautiful in that sterile, expensive way that reminded you constantly you didn't belong there. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water gray and restless under November skies. The furniture was all clean lines and neutral colors, nothing personal anywhere except the clothes Kayla had brought on that first day. I'd called her within an hour of arriving, using the phone Lucas's people had given me. The conversation had been awkward, monitored, with me trying to reassure her I was safe, while she alternated between relief and fury. "You can't just disappear with some crime boss, Hannah. This is insane. I know. But I don't have a choice right now. There's always a choice. Not when the alternative is dying, apparently." She'd gone quiet at that, the weight of my situation finally sinking in. Now she called me twice a day, morning and evening. Our conversations carefully neutral because we both knew someone was listening. I spent those 2 days trying to reconcile everything I'd learned about Michael. The man I'd loved had never existed. Not really. He'd been a carefully constructed fiction designed to keep me safe and ignorant. I should have been grateful for that protection. Instead, I felt cheated, robbed of the chance to know who he really was. The penthouse had a well-stocked kitchen, a library full of books I couldn't focus on, and a bedroom with sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent at the apartment I'd left behind. There was also a constant presence of security, men in dark clothes who rotated shifts, never speaking to me directly, but always watching. On the afternoon of the second day, Lucas arrived. I heard the elevator before I saw him, the distinct mechanical hum followed by doors sliding open. He stepped into the penthouse wearing another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal with a burgundy tie. His expression was grimmer than I'd seen it during our night-long interrogation. "Miss Collins," he set a leather briefcase on the dining table. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. That doesn't sound good. It isn't. He gestured toward the sofa. "Please, sit down." I perched on the edge of the cushion, my hands twisting together in my lap. Lucas remained standing, his posture rigid. "I've spent the past 2 days investigating whether the Albanians had any surveillance on Michael during the time you were together. I needed to know if they were aware of your existence." He paused, jaw tightening. "The answer is complicated." "Complicated how?" They had a file on Michael. Nothing extensive, just basic intelligence gathering on a rival organization's operative. That file included mentions of a girlfriend in Boston, though no name, no photos, nothing concrete. After Michael died, they assumed the connection died with him. Relief started to bloom in my chest, but Lucas's expression killed it before it could fully form. However, he continued, my investigation created a problem. My men made inquiries. They asked questions in places where the wrong people were listening. Word got back to the Albanian information network that I was actively searching for details about Michael's personal life. And that made them curious. More than curious. It told them there was something worth finding. Lucas moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. They started their own investigation. And because you've been working at the same restaurant for 2 years, living at the same address, using your real name, they found you in less than 48 hours. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arm of the sofa. Found me how? They have informants throughout the city. Restaurant workers, delivery drivers, people who see everything and report back for a price. Once they knew to look for a connection between Michael and Boston, it was simple enough to track down someone matching the profile. So they know about me now. Because of your investigation. Yes. He turned to face me. And for the first time since I'd met him, Lucas looked almost guilty. This is my fault. I should have been more careful, more discreet. Instead, I put you directly in their line of sight. I stood up, needing to move. Okay. So they know I exist. That doesn't mean they'll do anything about it, right? I don't know anything useful. I'm not a threat to them. You're leverage. Lucas pulled his phone from his pocket, swiped through it. We intercepted communications between the Albanian cell operating in Chicago and their leadership in New York. They're planning to use you as a bargaining chip in ongoing territory negotiations. He held out the phone. The screen showed what looked like a transcript of a text conversation. Names redacted, but the content clear enough. Target confirmed. Valentasi's brother's girlfriend. Lives alone. Minimal security. Easy pickup. When? Tonight, likely. We intercepted this communication 6 hours ago and immediately moved to secure your apartment building. My men stopped 3 Albanians in the parking garage. They had zip ties, chloroform, and a van with the license plates removed. My legs gave out. I sat back down heavily, all the air rushing from my lungs. They were really going to kidnap me. They were. They would have held you somewhere secure, probably out of state, and used you to pressure me into giving up territory in Chicago. Docks, specifically. There's a shipping operation they've wanted access to for years. And if you didn't give them what they wanted, Lucas's silence was answer enough. Oh God. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe through the panic rising in my throat. This can't be happening. This is insane. Welcome to the world Michael tried to keep you out of. Lucas pocketed his phone and moved to sit in the chair across from me. This isn't temporary anymore, Miss Collins. This is a real threat that won't disappear just because we want it to. But I don't know anything. I can't give them information about Michael or your family because I don't have any. They don't know that. And even if they did, you're still useful to them as leverage. Your existence, your connection to Michael, that makes you a weapon they can use against me. I looked up at him. This man I'd met 2 days ago who'd turned my life inside out. What do? You stay here. You follow the security protocols I'm going to outline. You don't go anywhere without armed escort. His voice was firm but not unkind. And you let me handle the Albanians. Handle them how? That's not something you need to worry about. It is if my life depends on it. I straightened, forcing strength into my voice despite the terror coursing through me. I deserve to know what you're planning. Lucas studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'm working on identifying exactly which cell is targeting you and where their base of operations is located. Once I have that information, I'll take steps to neutralize the threat. Neutralize meaning kill. Possibly. Or intimidate them enough that pursuing you becomes more trouble than it's worth. Or negotiate with their leadership to make you off limits. He spread his hands. I have options, but all of them require time and careful planning. How much time? A few weeks, maybe a month. A month. 4 weeks of living in this beautiful cage, cut off from my life, dependent on a man I barely knew for survival. The reality of it settled over me like a weight. I need to call Kayla. She's already on her way. I asked her to bring more of your things from your apartment. Clothes, personal items, anything that will make you more comfortable here. You didn't ask me first. No, because you would have argued, and we don't have time for arguments. Lucas stood, moving toward a side table where a tablet sat charging. He brought it back, unlocking it with his thumbprint. This is a map of Albanian-controlled territories in Chicago. The red zones are confirmed operations. The orange are suspected. I looked at the screen, seeing a patchwork of colored areas spread across a digital map of the city. There were more red and orange zones than I would have imagined. They're everywhere. Not everywhere, but enough places that you can't just walk around freely without risk. He zoomed in on one section. This is where your apartment is located. See how it's right on the border of an orange zone? That's why they were able to move on you so quickly. You were practically in their backyard. I've been living there for 2 years. Why target me now? Because 2 years ago they didn't know you existed. Now they do. And in the world of organized crime, information like that is currency. Lucas set the tablet aside. I need you to understand something, Miss Collins. This isn't going to be resolved quickly or easily. The Albanians are patient, well-funded, and deeply invested in their vendetta against my family. Michael's death only intensified that. Discovering you gives them a new avenue for attack. So I'm trapped. You're protected. There's a difference. Is there? I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels pretty similar to being a prisoner. You're alive. His tone hardened. That's the difference. Would you rather I'd left you in your apartment, ignorant of the threat, until 3 men with zip ties showed up at your door? He was right. And I hated it. No. Then accept the protection I'm offering. Follow the rules, and trust that I'm doing everything possible to end the situation as quickly as I can. The elevator chimed, and Lucas tensed slightly before relaxing when one of his men emerged, followed by Kayla. She was carrying 2 large duffel bags and looked simultaneously terrified and furious. Hannah! She dropped the bags and rushed to me, pulling me into a crushing hug. Oh my God, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. I'm okay. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. That asshole did. She pulled back, shooting Lucas a glare that would have intimidated a lesser man. He didn't even blink. Miss Turner, thank you for bringing Hannah's things. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. Kayla turned back to me, lowering her voice though Lucas could obviously still hear. I brought your laptop, some books, all the comfort clothes I could find, and I grabbed those photos from your dresser. The ones of your parents. My throat tightened. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 19, leaving me with little family and even less money. The photos were all I had left of them. Thank you. I also called your landlord and told him you'd be away for a while. Paid next month's rent from your checking account. I hope that's okay. I used the emergency password you gave me. It's fine. It's perfect. I squeezed her hands. What did you tell the others at work? That you had a family emergency and had to leave town suddenly. Sarah asked if it had anything to do with that guy who came in the other night. Kayla's eyes flicked to Lucas. I told her I didn't know. Smart. Lucas stepped forward. Miss Turner, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Hannah is in danger. Real, immediate danger. The less you know about where she is or why, the safer both of you will be. Is that a threat? It's a fact. If the wrong people think you have information, they'll come after you to get it. The best protection you have is genuine ignorance. Kayla's face paled, but she lifted her chin. Then I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll keep her safe, that you won't let anything happen to her. I promise. No hesitation, no qualification, just flat certainty. She's under my protection now. That means she's as safe as I can make her. And if that's not safe enough, then I'll die keeping her alive. He said it like he was commenting on the weather, casual and absolute. Kayla studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. She turned back to me. I need to go. I told my mom I'd be gone an hour max, and I'm already pushing it. Call me tonight? Every night until you're home?" She hugged me again, whispering in my ear, "If you need me, really need me, find a way to let me know. I'll come. I don't care what he says." I nodded against her shoulder, not trusting myself to speak. When she pulled away, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Lucas had his man escort her back to the elevator. As the doors closed on Kayla's worried face, I felt the weight of isolation settle over me again. "She cares about you very much," Lucas observed. "She's the only family I have left." I picked up one of the duffel bags, needing something to do with my hands. "She took me in when I first moved to Chicago. Let me stay on her couch until I found the apartment, got me the job at the diner. Then I'm glad she's in your life. Everyone needs someone who cares that much." I looked at him sharply, hearing something unexpected in his voice. "Did Michael have someone like that? Besides you?" "No. He kept people at arm's length. It was part of why he was so good at undercover work." Lucas moved toward the door. "I need to get back to my office. There's a meeting with my advisors about the Albanian situation in an hour. But I'll check in tomorrow." "Wait." I set down the bag. "Thank you. For stopping them. For protecting me. I know I've been angry and difficult, but I'm grateful. Really." Something in his expression softened fractionally. "You're Michael's legacy, Miss Collins. The last piece of him left in this world. Protecting you is the least I can do to honor his memory." He left before I could respond, the elevator carrying him away and leaving me alone with my thoughts in Kayla's carefully packed bags. I unpacked slowly, finding she'd included not just practical items, but comfort things too. My favorite blanket, the stuffed bear I'd had since childhood, a bag of the expensive tea I only bought when I felt like splurging. By the time I finished, the sun was setting over the lake, turning the water into molten gold. I stood at the window and thought about Michael, about the life he'd lived, and the lies he'd told, about Lucas and his promise to keep me safe, about the Albanians somewhere in the city, planning and scheming and seeing me as nothing more than a tool to be used. 2 days ago, I'd been Hannah Collins, 27-year-old waitress with a quiet life and a past I was trying to forget. Now I was something else, a target, a complication, a problem to be solved. And somewhere in the transformation, I'd become dependent on a man as dangerous as the threats he was protecting me from. I touched the locket at my throat, feeling the familiar weight of Michael's photo against my skin. Whatever happened next, whatever Lucas's plan entailed, I would survive it. I'd survived losing my parents. I'd survived Michael's abandonment and the 2 years of grief that followed. I would survive this too. I had to. 7 days had passed since Lucas brought me to the penthouse. 7 days of staring at the same walls, reading books I couldn't concentrate on, and having stilted phone conversations with Kayla, where we both pretended everything was fine. The security detail changed shifts like clockwork. Silent men who nodded politely but never engaged. I felt like a specimen in a very expensive terrarium. On the 8th morning, Lucas arrived without warning. I heard the elevator and looked up from the window, where I'd been watching boats move across Lake Michigan, their white sails bright against the gray water. "Miss Collins." He stepped out carrying a wooden box about the size of a briefcase. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual precision seemed slightly frayed. "I apologize for not visiting sooner. There have been complications with the Albanian situation." Complications. My stomach tightened. Bad complications? Manageable ones. He set the box on the coffee table with careful deliberation. "But that's not why I'm here. I brought you something. Something I should have given you days ago." I approached slowly, eyeing the box. It was made of polished walnut with brass hinges, the kind of container designed to protect valuable things. This belonged to Michael. After he died, I gathered his personal effects and stored them. I haven't opened this box in 2 years. Lucas's voice was rough around the edges. "But you have more right to these things than I do. You loved him. He loved you. That matters." My hands trembled as I touched the lid. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He stepped back, giving me space. "Take your time. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." I waited until he'd left the room before lifting the lid. The hinges made a soft creaking sound, and then I was looking at pieces of a life I'd never fully known. On top lay photographs. So many photographs. Michael at various ages. Childhood shots where I could see the resemblance to Lucas in the shape of his jaw. Teenage years when he'd been gangly and uncertain. And then more recent images. But it was the ones underneath that stole my breath. Photos of us. Together. Michael and me at a coffee shop, my head thrown back in laughter at something he'd said. The two of us on Boston Common. Autumn leaves scattered around us. A candid shot of me reading while he watched with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. I'd never seen these pictures. Never known he'd taken them. He documented everything. I whispered to the empty room. Beneath the photos I found his watch. The silver Rolex he'd worn every day we were together. He'd claimed it was a graduation gift from a wealthy uncle. Now I knew it had probably cost more than I'd earned in a year. I lifted it, feeling the weight. And without thinking, I brought it to my face. It still smelled faintly like him. That particular combination of expensive cologne and something uniquely Michael. The sob came from nowhere, tearing out of my throat before I could stop it. Then another and another. Until I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe properly. 2 years of grief I'd been holding back. 2 years of thinking I'd been abandoned when really he'd been dead. 2 years of loving a ghost. I sank to the floor, photographs spilling around me, the watch clutched to my chest. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, until there was nothing left inside me but exhaustion and acceptance. That's how Lucas found me. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone with my grief, and the next he was crouching beside me, his expression stripped of its usual careful control. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice wrecked. "I'm getting tears all over your expensive carpet." To hell with the carpet. He sat down properly, his back against the sofa, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. When my mother died, I didn't cry for 6 months. Everyone expected me to be strong, to lead the family through the transition. So I was. And then one day I found her recipe box in the kitchen, her handwriting on all those little cards, and I fell apart right there on the floor. My father found me an hour later, still sitting in the middle of broken glass from the cup I'd dropped. I looked at him through blurry eyes. What did he say? Nothing. He just sat down next to me and we stayed there until the sun set. Lucas picked up one of the photographs, the one of Michael and me laughing. You were good for him. I can see it in these pictures. He looks happy. Really happy. I don't think I'd seen that expression on his face in years before he met you. He never told me about you. Not really. Just vague mentions of an older brother who worked too much. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I thought you were some boring corporate executive. He made it sound like you two weren't close. We were very close. But Michael was also very good at compartmentalizing his life. The criminal side, the personal side, the side he showed you, he kept them all separate. Lucas set the photo down gently. I warned him, you know. Told him it was dangerous to get involved with someone outside our world. That it would end badly one way or another. You were right. I wish I hadn't been. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Michael was impulsive. Always had been, even as a kid. He'd get an idea in his head and just go for it without thinking through the consequences. Our father used to say he had courage but no caution. That combination makes you either a hero or a corpse. He ended up as both, sort of. I gathered the scattered photographs, stacking them carefully. Tell me about the night he died. The real story. Lucas's jaw tightened, but he didn't refuse. We'd received intelligence about an Albanian weapons cache in a warehouse on the south side. The plan was to do reconnaissance, gather evidence, and then coordinate a strike with our entire team. But Michael decided he could handle preliminary scouting alone. He went to the warehouse 2 nights before our scheduled operation. Why? Because he wanted to prove he was capable. That he could be more than just Lucas's little brother, or the boss's son. He wanted to earn respect through action. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. Instead, he walked into a trap. The Albanians knew we were watching that location. They were waiting for someone to make exactly the kind of impulsive move Michael made. There were 5 of them, you said, in the other night. 5 armed men against my 28-year-old brother who'd been trained in combat, but had never been in a real firefight. Lucas's voice had gone flat. emotionless in the way people get when discussing unbearable things. He killed 2 before they overwhelmed him. The coroner said he died quickly, if that matters. Gunshot wounds to the chest and head. I flinched at the clinical description, but I'd asked for the truth. Were you there? After? I got there 20 minutes too late. Someone in our organization had tipped off the Albanians that Michael was coming, but that same person didn't tell us about the trap until it was already sprung. By the time I arrived with backup, Michael was dead, and the Albanians were gone. That's why you've been looking for the traitor. For 2 years. Yes. He met my eyes. Whoever gave the Albanians that information killed my brother as surely as if they'd pulled the trigger themselves. And I will find them. However long it takes. The intensity in his voice sent a chill through me. This wasn't just about justice. This was personal vendetta carried with cold, patient determination. Does revenge make it hurt less? I asked quietly. No, but it gives the pain purpose. Lucas stood, moving to the window where I'd been earlier. Michael was the best of our family. He had compassion, idealism, hope that things could be different. I tried to protect those qualities in him, to let him hold on to his humanity even while working in an inhuman business. I failed. You didn't fail. He made his own choices. Choices influenced by the world I brought him into. He turned back to face me. If I'd been stronger, if I'd refused to let our father pull him into the organization, Michael would probably be designing buildings right now instead of buried in Oakwood Cemetery. You'd be planning a wedding instead of hiding in my apartment because I made you a target. I got to my feet, bones aching from sitting on the floor. Michael told me once that he admired you more than anyone else in his life, that you were the reason he tried to be better, to be worthy of the family name. He never blamed you for his choices, Lucas. You shouldn't either. His expression cracked slightly, grief breaking through the carefully maintained facade. He said that multiple times, usually when he'd had a few drinks and got sentimental. I picked up Michael's watch, holding it out to Lucas. He wore this every day, even when it didn't match his outfit, even when it would have been smarter to leave expensive jewelry at home. He said it reminded him of what he was working toward. Lucas took the watch, turning it over in his hands. I gave this to him on his 25th birthday. Told him it was a reminder that time is our most valuable asset, that we should spend it on things that matter. His thumb traced the face. He was wearing it when he died. The Albanians took it as a trophy. It took me 8 months and a considerable amount of money to get it back. You could have kept it. I should have. He held the watch out to me. But now I think Michael would want you to have it. Something to remember him by beyond photographs. I can't take this. It's too valuable. Too personal. It's already yours. Everything in that box is yours. Lucas pressed the watch into my palm, closing my fingers around it. Michael chose you, Hannah. Out of all the people in his complicated, dangerous life, he chose to love you. That makes these belongings yours by right. The use of my first name startled me. In all our interactions, he'd called me Miss Collins with formal precision. This felt different, more intimate. Thank you. I set the watch carefully on the coffee table. And thank you for telling me the truth about how he died. I needed to know. You deserved to know. He moved back toward the box, kneeling beside it. There's more in here. Some books he loved, a journal he kept, though it's mostly operational notes, nothing personal. A few other things. A journal? I knelt beside him, looking into the box. Can I read it? Eventually. But be warned, it's not romantic. It's the kind of record-keeping a soldier might keep. Dates, locations, observations about Albanian movements. He was meticulous about documentation. Lucas pulled out a leather-bound notebook. This is separate. His architectural sketches. Buildings he wanted to design someday. I took the sketchbook with reverent hands, opening it to reveal page after page of detailed drawings. Buildings that would never be built. Dreams that had died with the dreamer. He was talented, Lucas said, looking over my shoulder. Really talented. If he'd pursued architecture seriously, he would have been successful. But he chose loyalty instead. He chose family. There's a difference, even if the outcome is the same. We sat there on the floor, going through Michael's things, and for the first time since I'd met Lucas Valentasi, The tension between us eased into something almost comfortable. We weren't captor and prisoner in that moment. We were two people who'd loved the same man, sharing grief and memories and the weight of loss. "He used to make me breakfast on Sundays," I said, looking at a photo of Michael in what must have been his Chicago apartment. These elaborate Italian meals his grandmother had apparently taught him. He'd spend 2 hours in the kitchen, and the food was always amazing. Our grandmother raised us after our mother died. She was from Naples, traditional in every way, made sure we knew how to cook properly because she said a man who couldn't feed himself couldn't be trusted to lead a family. Lucas's voice held warmth I hadn't heard before. Michael was her favorite. She used to say he had gentle hands, perfect for making pasta. He never talked about your parents much. Our father is alive but distant. Our mother died when I was 12 and Michael was 7. Car accident. Though looking back, I'm not certain it was truly accidental. He said it matter-of-factly, but I heard the old pain underneath. She was the heart of our family. After she was gone, everything became colder, more business-focused. I'm sorry. So am I. He stood, brushing off his pants. I should go. I have meetings this afternoon about security arrangements. But I wanted to make sure you had these things. That you knew Michael kept pieces of your relationship even though he never told anyone about you. Why didn't he? Tell anyone, I mean. Because the moment we knew about you, you became a potential weakness. An asset that could be exploited. Lucas moved toward the elevator. In our world, the things you love are the things that can destroy you. Michael understood that. He kept you secret to keep you safe. It didn't work. No, but it delayed the danger by 2 years. That's not nothing. He paused at the elevator, hand on the call button. I'll be back tomorrow. And Hannah, it's okay to grieve. Don't hold it back on my account or anyone else's. Michael deserves your tears. The elevator doors closed before I could respond. I turned back to the box of belongings, to the photographs and sketches and watch that smelled like someone I'd loved. The someone I'd never really known but had loved anyway. I spent the rest of the afternoon organizing everything, creating a kind of shrine on the coffee table. As evening fell and the security detail changed shifts outside, I sat cross-legged on the floor with Michael's architectural sketchbook open in my lap, tracing the lines he'd drawn with my fingertips. I'm sorry I never got to know the real you, I whispered to the pages. But I'm grateful I got to know the version you wanted to be. The penthouse was silent, except for the hum of the heating system and the distant sound of the city below. But for the first time since Lucas had taken me from the diner, I didn't feel quite so alone. Michael's memory was here with me, tangible in the things he'd left behind. And somehow, in sharing those memories with Lucas, I'd found the first threads of connection to a man I'd thought was my enemy. 3 days after Lucas brought me Michael's belongings, he arrived at the penthouse with a proposition that would change everything between us. I need your help. He stood in the living room, jacket already removed, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually immaculate appearance showed signs of strain. I know it's asking a lot, but I don't have anyone else I can trust with this. I set down the book I'd been pretending to read. Help with what? Finding the traitor who killed Michael. He pulled a tablet from his briefcase, along with a laptop and several external hard drives. I've been reviewing communications, financial records, operational reports for 2 years. There's a pattern somewhere, inconsistencies that will reveal who leaked information to the Albanians. But I'm too close to see it clearly. Everyone in my organization is either loyal to specific people or has something to gain from various outcomes. I need someone with no stake in the politics. I'm not an investigator, Lucas. I design graphics for restaurants and small businesses. You have an eye for patterns, for details that don't fit. He set up the equipment on the dining table, his movements precise despite obvious exhaustion. Michael told me once that you could look at a menu design and immediately identify which elements didn't belong, which fonts clashed, which spacing was off by millimeters. You see things other people miss. That's visual design, not criminal investigation. The principle is the same. Documents, transactions, communications. They all have patterns. When someone is lying or hiding something, those patterns break down. Lucas looked at me directly, vulnerability showing through his usual control. I'm asking because I'm desperate, Hannah. Whoever betrayed Michael is still in my organization, still making decisions, still trusted, and I need to find them before they cause more damage. The raw honesty in his voice decided me. What do you need me to do? Relief washed over his features. Come to my office. Review everything with me. Use that eye for detail to find what I've been missing. An hour later, I sat in Lucas's office downtown, surrounded by monitors displaying spreadsheets, communication logs, and operational reports. The space was as impressive as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago, dark furniture, that sense of controlled power permeating everything. Lucas brought me coffee, showed me how to navigate the encrypted files, and then sat beside me at the conference table he'd converted into a workspace. These are all communications from the month before Michael died. Every text, email, and phone call we have records of between our key operatives. He pulled up document after document. Michael was investigating Albanian operations on the south side. The warehouse where he died wasn't random. Someone told them exactly when he'd be there. I studied the screens, letting my eyes unfocus slightly the way I did when examining complex designs, looking for the thing that didn't belong. Who knew Michael was going to that warehouse? Officially, just me and my top 5 lieutenants. But information spreads in any organization. Someone could have overheard, guessed, been told secondhand. Lucas rubbed his face tiredly. That's the problem. Too many possible leak points. So we work backwards. Show me the financial records for your top people. All of them, starting from 3 years ago. And why 3 years? Because if someone was being paid by the Albanians, they probably weren't bought the day before the ambush. Corruption takes time to establish. We need to look for pattern changes, new income sources, unexplained deposits, lifestyle changes that don't match legitimate earnings. Lucas pulled up the files without argument. We worked side by side for hours, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I created visual timelines and graphs using design software I'd brought from the penthouse. I color-coded transactions, flagged anomalies, built a picture of financial movements across his organization. Around hour 4, I found something. Lucas, look at this. I pulled up a graph showing deposits into various accounts. Franco Ricchetti. Who is he? One of my most trusted lieutenants. He's been with the family for 15 years, worked his way up from street-level enforcement to strategic planning. Lucas leaned closer, studying the screen. What about him? His deposits don't match the pattern of your other people. See here? I pointed to a spike in his account 3 years ago. Everyone else has regular payments that match their salaries, plus bonuses that correlate with successful operations. But Franco has these irregular deposits that don't align with anything your organization did. Those could be legitimate investments, side businesses. Could be. But look at the timing. I overlaid another graph showing Albanian activity in Chicago. Every time there's a deposit into Franco's account, there's corresponding Albanian movement in territories you were targeting. It's like he was being paid for information about your plans. Lucas went very still beside me. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. Show me the month Michael died. I pulled up the timeline, hands steady, despite the tension radiating from Lucas. Here, 2 weeks before the ambush, Franco received $25,000 from an offshore account. Then nothing for 6 months after Michael's death. Then the payments resume. They stopped paying him because they'd gotten what they wanted. Lucas's voice had gone flat, emotionless. Michael's death was the big score. After that, any other information was just routine maintenance. I could be wrong, I said quietly. This isn't definitive proof. No, but it's more than I've found in 2 years of looking. He stood, pulling out his phone. I need to make some calls. Can you keep digging? See if there are any communications between Franco and unknown numbers during the relevant time periods. Yes, but Lucas? I waited until he looked at me. What are you going to do? What needs to be done? He walked to the windows, phone already at his ear, speaking in rapid Italian to whoever answered. I turned back to the screens, pushing aside my unease. I'd offered to help, and this was what help looked like in Lucas's world. Identifying traitors so they could be dealt with using methods I probably didn't want to imagine. Over the next 3 days, Lucas and I worked together almost constantly. He brought me to his office each morning, We analyzed data until evening, and then his driver took me back to the penthouse while Lucas continued working through the night. The investigation consumed both of us. During those long hours, the dynamic between us shifted. We were no longer captor and captive, not quite friends, but something else. Partners, maybe. Two people united by shared loss and common purpose. At night, back at the penthouse, I called Kayla. "How are you holding up?" she asked, voice tight with worry. "Better than I expected. I'm helping with something. I can't tell you what, but it's important. It's connected to Michael." "Hannah, you're scaring me. This man, Lucas, he's dangerous. Everyone knows it. I know. But he's not dangerous to me." And somehow, despite everything, I believed that. "I'll explain when I can. Just know that I'm safe. You'd better be. Because if anything happens to you, I'm coming after him myself." The threat would have been funny if it wasn't so sincere. "I love you too, Kayla." During our 4th day working together, I learned more about Lucas's operation. He explained the legitimate businesses. 3 restaurants, a construction company, an import firm that actually did import legal goods alongside the illegal ones. He talked about the people who depended on those businesses for employment, for stability. "It's not all violence and crime," he said during a rare break. "Most of what we do is regular business. The illegal stuff funds the legitimate operations, and the legitimate operations employ hundreds of people who have nothing to do with the criminal side. That's a complicated moral calculation. It's the only one that makes sense in my world." He handed me a fresh coffee. "You think I'm a monster? I can see it in your eyes sometimes. I think you're someone navigating an impossible situation with a code of ethics that doesn't match mine. That doesn't make you a monster. Just different." Something in his expression softened. "Michael said something similar once. Said I was doing the best I could with the life I was given. He was right." We held each other's gaze for a moment too long, and I felt my pulse quicken. Then Lucas looked away, focusing back on the screens. "Show me what else you've found." By day 5, we had incontrovertible evidence. Franco Ricchetti had received over $300,000 from Albanian sources over 3 years. The payments correlated with every major setback Lucas's organization had suffered, every operation that had mysteriously failed, every ambush that had seemed too well timed to be coincidence, and buried in encrypted communications I'd managed to access using social engineering techniques I'd learned for legitimate design work. I found the smoking gun, a text from Franco to an Albanian contact the night before Michael died. "The kid is going to the warehouse tomorrow night, alone. He wants to prove himself." Lucas read it 3 times, his jaw so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Then he very carefully set down his phone and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Thank you," he said finally, voice rough, "for finding this, for giving me the truth. What happens now? Now I deal with Franco Ricchetti." He turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw pure rage in his eyes. "And you don't need to worry about how. He killed Michael as surely as if he'd pulled the trigger himself." "I know." Lucas moved back to the table, began gathering the evidence into encrypted files. "That's why what happens next isn't something you should witness." "Lucas?" "No." He looked at me directly. "You've helped me more than you can possibly understand. You've given me justice for my brother, but the execution of that justice isn't something I want you to carry. Michael kept you separate from this world for a reason. I'm going to honor that." I understood what he wasn't saying. This was where our partnership ended, where the line between his world and mine had to be redrawn. "Just tell me one thing. Will he suffer?" "Yes." No hesitation, but probably less than he deserves. I nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad I could help." Lucas reached across the table, took my hand in his. The touch was electric, unexpected, and his eyes held mine with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "You're extraordinary, Hannah Collins. Michael saw that. And now I do too." He released my hand before I could respond, gathering his things and preparing to leave. But as I watched him go, I realized that something fundamental had changed between us. I'd seen him not as the dangerous crime boss, but as a man carrying impossible burdens, seeking justice for someone he'd loved. And in helping him, I'd become something more than just Michael's ex-girlfriend or a protected witness. I'd become someone Lucas Valentasi valued, someone he trusted. And that, I was beginning to realize, was both the most dangerous and most powerful position I could possibly occupy in his world. Lucas arrived at the penthouse just past dawn, his presence announced by the elevator's mechanical hum. I'd been awake for hours, unable to sleep after he'd texted that he needed to handle Franco personally. The message had been characteristically brief. "It's done. I'm coming to you." Now he stood in my living room, and for the first time since I'd met him, Lucas Valentasi looked undone. His shirt was untucked, tie missing, and dark stains marred his cuffs that I deliberately didn't examine too closely. But it was his eyes that struck me most. Haunted, exhausted, carrying the weight of whatever justice he'd administered in those hours I'd spent staring at the ceiling. "You should have stayed away," I said quietly. "Let someone else bring the news. I needed to see you." His voice was rough, unused, to make sure you understood what happened. What I did. I gestured toward the sofa, and he collapsed into it with none of his usual controlled grace. I poured bourbon from the bar cart his staff had stocked, brought it to him. His fingers brushed mine as he took the glass, and neither of us pulled away immediately. "Tell me," I said, settling into the chair across from him, not close enough to touch, but near enough to see the tension in every line of his body. Franco confessed. Everything. Lucas drank deeply, then set the glass down with deliberate care. The Albanians approached him 3 years ago, offered money, territory, promises of power if he helped them weaken my organization from within. He took it. Piece by piece, he sold us out. And Michael? Franco told them Michael would be at that warehouse alone. Gave them his timeline, his planned entry point, everything they needed to set the trap. Lucas's jaw tightened until I could see the muscle jump. He watched my brother walk into his death and said nothing. For 30 pieces of Albanian silver. The biblical reference wasn't lost on me. What did you do to him? What needed doing? He met my eyes directly, not flinching from whatever he saw in my expression. "I can't give you details, Hannah. Not because I don't trust you, but because knowing makes you complicit. And I won't do that to you. You already involved me in finding him. Finding isn't executing. There's a line there, and I'm trying to keep you on the right side of it." Lucas leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But you should know. It's over. Franco won't hurt anyone else. Won't betray anyone else. Justice for Michael is done." I should have felt relief. Closure. Instead, I felt the weight of what Lucas had done settling onto my own shoulders. "Do you regret it? Killing him? No. Absolute certainty. But I regret that it was necessary. That the world we live in requires this kind of violence to maintain any semblance of order or loyalty." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. Lucas glanced at it, then swore under his breath in Italian. "What's wrong?" "Albanian retaliation. They know Franco's dead and they're hitting back." He was already standing, fingers flying across his phone screen. "2 of my clubs are under attack. My people need me." "Then go. I can't leave you unprotected. If they're striking at me, they might come for you too." Lucas moved toward the window, looking down at the city waking below us. "I need to get you somewhere safer. The penthouse is secure, but it's known. They could find you here." "Where would we go?" "There's a property outside the city, fully fortified, off-grid. My family's emergency location." He turned back to me. "Pack quickly. We're leaving in 10 minutes. I didn't argue. Whatever was happening out there in Chicago's criminal underworld, I'd learned enough to trust Lucas's instincts about danger. I threw clothes into a bag while he made rapid-fire calls in the living room, his voice shifting between English and Italian depending on who answered. We descended to the parking garage in silence, Lucas's hand at the small of my back, 2 armed men flanking us. The SUV waiting was different from the one I'd ridden in before. Heavier, armored, windows so dark I couldn't see through them even from inside. "What about Kayla?" I asked as we pulled out. "If they know about me, do they know about her?" "Already handled. I have people watching her apartment, her work, everywhere she goes. She's safe." Lucas's phone buzzed again. He read the message, his expression darkening. They hit 3 locations simultaneously. "Coordinated attack. This is bigger than just revenge for Franco." "What do you mean?" I mean, the Albanians have been planning this for a while. Franco's death just gave them the excuse to execute it. He looked at me, something shifting in his gaze. I need to tell you something. About why you're really in danger. My stomach dropped. What haven't you told me? When my people questioned Franco before he died, he revealed that the Albanians have been planning to use you as leverage for weeks. Not just as a random ex-girlfriend, but specifically because of something Michael told Franco before he died. What could Michael have possibly told him? That he was planning to leave. To take you somewhere far from Chicago and start over. Lucas's voice softened. Franco mentioned it to his Albanian contacts as proof that Michael was weak, emotionally compromised. But it had the opposite effect. It made them see you as the key to controlling me. I don't understand. They think if they have you, I'll make concessions to get you back. Trade territory, stand-down operations, whatever they demand. His hand found mine in the dim interior. Because they figured out what I didn't want to admit even to myself. What's that? That you matter to me. More than strategy dictates you should. The confession hung between us, electric and dangerous. I should have pulled my hand away, should have maintained the distance that kept this situation manageable. Instead, my fingers tightened around his. Lucas, I know. It's complicated. You loved my brother. I'm the man who dragged you into this world. The timing is impossible. The circumstances are worse. He lifted my hand, pressed it briefly to his lips. But it doesn't change the truth. You matter. The SUV jerked suddenly, throwing us both forward. Lucas immediately pulled me against him, shielding my body with his, as the driver shouted something urgent in Italian. We're being followed, Lucas translated, his arms tight around me. 3 vehicles, moving to intercept. The Albanians? Has to be. He was already on his phone, barking orders. We're 10 minutes from the safe house. We just need to make it there. The next 10 minutes were the longest of my life. Our driver took turns at speeds that had me gripping Lucas's jacket, tires squealing on wet pavement. Behind us, I could hear the pursuing vehicles, their engines roaring as they tried to catch up. Then I heard something else. Gunfire. Get down! Lucas pushed me to the floor, covering me completely with his body as bullets struck the armored exterior. The sound was deafening, like hail made of metal and death. Our driver returned fire through some mechanism I couldn't see, and Lucas's security team in the trailing vehicle engaged the attackers. The SUV swerved violently, and I felt us leave the main road, bouncing over rough terrain. Almost there, Lucas said against my ear, his breath warm despite the cold terror coursing through me. Stay down. Don't move. The gunfire intensified, then suddenly stopped. Our SUV came to an abrupt halt, and I heard heavy metal doors sliding closed behind us. Clear, someone shouted. We're secure. Lucas helped me up slowly, his hands checking me over for injuries. Are you hurt? Did anything hit you? I'm fine. Terrified, but fine. I looked past him through the windshield and saw we were in some kind of reinforced garage. Stone walls, steel doors, security cameras in every corner. Where are we? The safe house. Built into an old estate 30 miles outside Chicago. He climbed out, then reached back to help me down. No one knows about this place except my closest people. We'll be secure here while I handle the Albanian situation. The interior of the safe house was surprisingly elegant for a bunker. All dark wood and soft lighting, comfortable furniture that somehow made the steel-reinforced walls less oppressive. Lucas led me to a bedroom, then excused himself to coordinate response with his people. I sank onto the bed, adrenaline finally crashing, leaving me shaking. We'd been shot at. Actually shot at. Bullets striking metal inches from where I'd been sitting. People trying to kill me because I'd once loved a man I never really knew. Hours later, Lucas found me still sitting there, staring at nothing. The attacks have been contained, he said from the doorway. My people eliminated the strike teams. The Albanian leadership is backing down, at least temporarily. How many died? 5 of theirs. 2 of mine. He crossed to sit beside me. I'm sorry you had to experience that. The fear, the violence. You shouldn't have to live this way. But I do. Because of Michael. Because of you. Because I'm caught in something I never asked for. I turned to look at him. When does it end, Lucas? When do I get to just be Hannah Collins again? Living my boring life, working at the diner. I don't know. Raw honesty. Maybe never. Once you're marked by this world, it's hard to wash it off completely. Something broke inside me then. Not breaking apart, but breaking open. All the fear, grief, and twisted attraction I'd been holding back came flooding out. I turned to Lucas, saw the same complicated mess reflected in his eyes, and before I could think better of it, I kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, angry, filled with everything we couldn't say out loud. He froze for half a second, then pulled me closer, one hand tangling in my hair while the other pressed against the small of my back. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. "I'm sorry," I said. "That was... don't." He touched my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "Don't apologize for being human. I loved your brother." "I know. This is all kinds of wrong. I know that too." He stood, putting distance between us. "But wrong doesn't make it untrue. And we need to figure out what we're going to do about it." He left me alone then, and I lay back on the bed, Michael's locket heavy against my chest, the taste of Lucas still on my lips, and the sound of gunfire echoing in my memory. Everything had changed, and I had no idea how to change it back. 5 days at the safe house. 5 days of careful distance and loaded silences. Lucas spent most of his time in the command center he'd set up, coordinating operations against the Albanians while I wandered the estate like a ghost, unable to settle, unable to stop replaying that kiss. Every time we passed each other in the hallway, the air crackled with unspoken words. Every accidental touch felt deliberate. And through it all, Michael's memory hung between us like an accusation I couldn't answer. On the 6th morning, Kayla's scheduled call brought me back to reality. "Hannah, thank God. I've been losing my mind." Her voice was tight with strain. "Are you safe? Really safe?" "I am. Lucas has me somewhere secure. Armed guards. The whole thing." I tucked myself into the window seat overlooking the estate grounds. "How are you?" "Terrified for you. And confused. The news is reporting gang violence across Chicago. Multiple deaths. Is that connected to you?" I closed my eyes. Indirectly. It's complicated. Everything about this situation is complicated. She paused, and I heard traffic noise in the background. "Hannah, I need to tell you something. About Michael." My stomach clenched. "What about him?" I knew something was off about him. Back when you two were together. The way he'd show up at odd hours, how he always paid cash, those times he'd disappear for weeks with vague excuses. Her voice dropped. "I should have said something. Should have warned you that he seemed dangerous. You couldn't have known what he really was. Maybe not. But I knew he was lying to you. And I stayed quiet because you seemed happy." She let out a shaky breath. "I'm so sorry, Hannah. For not protecting you better." "Kayla, stop. This isn't your fault." "None of it is." I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. "Michael made his choices. Lucas made his. I'm just trying to survive the fallout. And what about your choices? What do you want?" The question hit harder than I expected. What did I want? Safety, obviously. My life back. But underneath those practical desires lurked something more complicated. Something I wasn't ready to examine too closely. "I want this to be over," I said finally. "I want to stop being a target. That's not what I meant. And you know it." Kayla's voice gentled. "Lucas, there's something between you two. I could see it that day I brought your things. The way he looked at you. It's not like that. Isn't it?" I didn't answer, because I couldn't lie to Kayla. Not about this. After we hung up, I found Lucas in his study, surrounded by maps and reports. He looked up when I entered, something softening in his expression. "Kayla?" he asked. "She's worried and perceptive." I leaned against the doorframe. "She thinks there's something between us. Smart woman." Lucas set down the document he'd been reading. "Is there? I don't know. Maybe. Probably." I crossed my arms, suddenly defensive. "But it's impossible, Lucas. I loved your brother. You're investigating his murder. We're trapped in this situation together. Nothing about this is healthy or normal. No, it's not. He stood, moving toward me with that controlled grace that always made my pulse quicken. But healthy and normal went out the window the moment you dropped that locket in front of me at the diner. So what do? We finish what we started. The Albanian threat. The justice for Michael. And then, he stopped, jaw tightening. Then we figure out if this is real or just trauma and proximity. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then answered immediately. Talk to me. His entire demeanor shifted, becoming harder, colder. When? How many? Deploy the response team. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call, already moving toward the closet where he kept tactical gear. What happened? The Albanians hit one of my warehouses. They're trying to draw me out, make me respond personally so they can ambush me. He pulled on a bulletproof vest with practiced efficiency. I need to go. But you're staying here with the security team. Lucas. Wait. I grabbed his arm before he could leave. Is this connected to Franco? To what you did to him? Everything is connected, Hannah. Franco's death, the Albanian retaliation, the attacks on my operations. It's all part of the same war we've been fighting for years. He covered my hand with his. But this ends soon. I promise you that. How can you promise that? Because I'm done playing defense. Tonight I'm going after their leadership directly. His eyes held mine. And when it's over, you'll be free. Truly free. No more hiding. No more fear. What if something happens to you? Then my second in command will make sure you're protected and compensated appropriately. He said it so matter-of-factly, like his potential death was just another contingency to plan for. That's not what I meant. I know. He pulled me closer, his free hand cupping my face. But I can't think about that right now. I need to focus on ending this. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with security guards who wouldn't meet my eyes and the crushing weight of waiting. Hours passed. I tried to read, to eat, to do anything besides imagine Lucas lying dead in some warehouse. The security detail changed shifts. Night fell, and still no word. Finally, past midnight, I heard vehicles approaching. I rushed to the window, watching as multiple SUVs pulled into the secure garage. Men emerged, some supporting wounded colleagues. And then I saw Lucas. He was alive, walking on his own power. But even from a distance, I could see blood on his clothes. I met him at the door to the main house. Up close, the damage was worse. A cut above his eyebrow. Bruises forming along his jaw. His shirt torn and stained. Are you hurt? I reached for him, hands hovering, unsure where it was safe to touch. Not my blood. Mostly. He swayed slightly, and I realized he was running on pure adrenaline. We got them. The Albanian leadership in Chicago. They're done. Lucas, you need medical attention. I need a shower and bourbon, in that order. But he didn't move. Just stood there staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. I kept thinking about you. In the middle of the firefight, when bullets were flying and men were dying, I was thinking about how I'd promised to keep you safe. How I couldn't do that if I was dead. You're not dead. No, I'm not. He lifted his hand, fingers tracing my cheekbone with surprising gentleness, given the violence he'd just survived. Hannah, I need to tell you something. Before I lose my nerve. What? Michael's last words. Before he died, he managed to call me. Just for a few seconds before the Albanians found his phone and destroyed it. Lucas's voice went rough. He said, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I loved her. Tell her to be happy." Tears blurred my vision. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was selfish. Because hearing him say your name, hearing how much you mattered to him in his final moments, made me realize I wanted that too. To matter to you like that. He wiped away a tear that had escaped, and I felt guilty for it. Still do. Lucas, let me finish. Please. He took a breath. Michael asked me to tell you to be happy. And I think, wherever he is, he'd understand that happiness might mean moving forward. With me, if that's what you want. The confession hung between us. Vulnerable and honest in a way I'd never expected from Lucas Valentasi. I don't know if I'm ready, I whispered. It's only been weeks since I learned he was dead. Since I started processing that grief. I know, And I'm not asking you to decide anything right now." He stepped back, creating space. "But I needed you to know that this isn't just trauma or proximity, that what I feel for you is real, even if the timing is terrible." He left then, disappearing toward his room to shower and tend his wounds. I stood alone in the hallway, Michael's locket heavy against my chest, Lucas's words echoing in my mind. Later, unable to sleep, I went looking for the box of Michael's belongings that Lucas had brought from the penthouse. At the bottom, beneath the photographs and sketches, I found what I'd been searching for without knowing it: Michael's diary. I opened it with trembling hands, flipping past operational notes and tactical observations, until I found personal entries from his final weeks. And there, written in Michael's familiar handwriting, were words that broke my heart and set me free at the same time. "Lucas thinks I'm being reckless, pursuing this relationship with Hannah. Maybe I am, but she makes me want to be better than what this family made me. She makes me want to live instead of just survive. If something happens to me, I hope she finds happiness again, with someone who can give her the life I never could, maybe even with Lucas. He'd protect her in ways I never managed to. He'd love her the way she deserves, and she'd be good for him, soften some of those hard edges he's built up over the years. They'd be good together, if they'd let themselves try." I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Michael had known, had seen the possibility of what might grow between Lucas and me, and he'd given his blessing before he even died. Permission I hadn't known I needed until I held it in my hands. The next morning, I found Lucas in his study, freshly showered and bandaged, looking over reports from the previous night's operation. "It's really over?" I asked from the doorway. "The Albanian threat? Their Chicago operation is dismantled. There might be retaliation attempts from other cities, but nothing you need to worry about." He looked up, registering something in my expression. "What is it?" I read Michael's diary, the personal entries. I stepped into the room, holding the leather-bound book. He wrote about us, about you and me, what might happen after he was gone. Lucas went very still. What did he say? That we'd be good together, that he'd want me to be happy, even if that meant being with you. I set the diary on his desk. It doesn't make the guilt go away completely, or erase the complications, but it helps. Hannah, I'm not saying I'm ready for anything serious. I'm still grieving, still processing everything that's happened. I met his eyes directly, but I'm saying I want to try, when the time is right, to see if this could be something real. Lucas stood, moving around the desk to stand before me. "You're sure?" "No, but I don't think I'll ever be completely sure. So I'm choosing to trust my instincts instead." I reached up, touching the bandage above his eyebrow. "And my instincts say that you're worth the risk." He kissed me then, soft and careful, like I might break. And maybe I was breaking, but in the way things break open rather than apart, letting in light after years of darkness. When we finally separated, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "We'll take this slow," he murmured. "As slow as you need." "Okay, and if you change your mind, if this becomes too much, I'll tell you. I promise. It wasn't a happily ever after. Not yet. But it was a beginning, built on honesty and loss, and the fragile hope that sometimes, even in the darkest circumstances, we find exactly who we need. The operation against the Albanian leadership took 3 weeks to plan and execute properly. Lucas orchestrated it with surgical precision. Coordinated strikes across multiple locations, dismantling their Chicago infrastructure piece by piece until their local organization collapsed entirely. I watched it unfold from the safety of the estate, monitoring communications and tracking movements the way Lucas had taught me during our investigation of Franco. It was strange how quickly I'd adapted to this world, how natural it felt to understand the logistics of organized crime. When it finally ended, Lucas came to me exhausted but victorious. The Albanian cell in Chicago had been neutralized. Key members arrested through anonymous tips to federal authorities, others persuaded to relocate permanently, and a handful who'd chosen violence over surrender, dealt with using methods I didn't ask about. "It's done," he said simply. finding me in the library where I'd been reading Michael's architectural sketches for the 100th time. You're free. Really free. No more threats. No more hiding. I set down the sketchbook, searching his face. What does that mean for us? It means you get to choose. You can go back to your life, back to the diner and your apartment. I'll make sure you're compensated for everything you've lost. Everything you've been through. He paused, something vulnerable crossing his features. Or you can stay, build something new. With me, the weight of the decision pressed down on me. My old life seemed like it belonged to someone else now. That girl who'd served coffee and thought the world was simple. I couldn't go back to being her, even if I wanted to. I want to see Michael's grave first, I said, before I decide anything. I need to say goodbye properly. Lucas arranged it for the next day. We drove to Oakwood Cemetery in the early morning, just the two of us in an unmarked car. The November air was bitter, threatening snow, and I wrapped Michael's watch around my wrist for comfort as we walked through rows of headstones. Michael's grave was in the family plot, surrounded by Valentasis going back generations. The stone was simple but elegant, carved with his name and the years that bracketed his too short life. Someone, probably Lucas, had left fresh flowers. I knelt on the cold ground, pressing my palm against the marble. I'm sorry I never got to know the real you, I whispered, but I loved the version you showed me, and I'm grateful for the time we had, even if it was built on lies meant to protect me. Lucas stood a respectful distance away, giving me privacy, but I reached back, finding his hand, pulling him closer. Michael wrote in his diary that we'd be good together. I told the headstone. He said you'd protect me better than he could, that I'd be good for you too. Tears slipped down my cheeks, freezing on my skin. I hope he was right. I hope wherever you are, you understand. We stayed for an hour, Lucas telling stories about their childhood, while I shared memories from my 2 years with Michael. It felt like closure, like finally putting together the complete picture of someone I'd loved in fragments. As we walked back to the car, Lucas's phone rang. He answered, listened, then ended the call with a satisfied expression. That was my attorney. The federal investigation into Albanian operations has resulted in 23 arrests. They're crediting an anonymous source for providing evidence. He opened the car door for me. That source was you, Hannah. The patterns you identified, the financial records you organized. You helped bring down a criminal enterprise. I just looked at spreadsheets. You did more than that. You saw connections trained investigators missed. He started the engine, pulling out of the cemetery, which is why I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Work for me, legitimately. I'm expanding the legal side of my business operations, the construction company, the import firm, the restaurants. They all need someone who can analyze data, identify inefficiencies, see patterns. You have that skill. He glanced at me, and it would give you independence. Your own income, your own purpose. You wouldn't be dependent on me. The offer surprised me. You want me to work for you? With me? There's a difference. He turned onto the highway heading back into the city. I'm trying to transition more of my operations into legitimate business. It's a long process, but having someone I trust handling the financial analysis would help. Someone who isn't compromised by family politics or criminal connections. I considered it. The idea of returning to the diner felt impossible now, but I needed something. Purpose. Structure. A way to rebuild my life that didn't revolve entirely around Lucas. What about us? I asked quietly. Would working together complicate that? Probably, but we're already complicated. He reached across the console, taking my hand. I'm not asking you to make any decisions about our relationship right now, Hannah. I'm asking if you want a job. If you want to use your skills for something meaningful. Everything else can develop however it develops. 4 months later, I stood in the office Lucas had set up for me in his downtown building. The space overlooked Lake Michigan, with windows that caught the afternoon sun, and a desk large enough for the multiple monitors I used for data analysis. My title was Financial Operations Analyst, and my work genuinely was legitimate, identifying cost overruns in construction projects, optimizing supply chains for the import business, analyzing market trends for restaurant expansion. Kayla visited regularly, initially suspicious of my new life but gradually accepting that I was genuinely happy. She'd even started dating one of Lucas's legitimate employees, a project manager named Ryan who had no connection to the criminal side of operations. "You seem different," she said one afternoon, sitting across from my desk with coffee from the shop downstairs. "More confident, more yourself." "I feel different." I saved the spreadsheet I'd been working on. Like I finally understand who I am outside of who someone else needs me to be. "And Lucas, how's that going?" I smiled, unable to help it. "Slowly. We're taking it slow." Slowly meant dinners at quiet restaurants, walks along the lakefront, conversations that lasted until dawn. It meant Lucas teaching me about his family's history, the complicated legacy he was trying to reform. It meant me sharing my grief about my parents, my fears about the future, my dreams of what I wanted to build. It meant kissing that led nowhere except to more kissing, both of us content to let things develop naturally without rushing toward anything we weren't ready for. That evening, Lucas found me still working past normal hours. He leaned against my doorframe, jacket slung over one shoulder, tie loosened. "You're going to burn out if you keep these hours," says the man who's here at 8 p.m. I closed my laptop. "Did your meeting with the City Planning Commission go well?" "Better than expected. The riverfront development is approved." He crossed to my desk, perching on the edge. "Which means I'm going to need your analysis of the construction bids by next week." "Already done. Sent the report to your encrypted email this morning." "Efficient." He smiled, and I felt the familiar flutter in my stomach that happened every time he looked at me like that. "Have dinner with me. There's a new Italian place in River North I want to try." "Is this a date or a business dinner? Can it be both?" We took his car, driving through the city that had become familiar in new ways. Chicago wasn't just the place I'd fled to after Michael disappeared anymore. It was home, complicated and dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. Over dinner, Lucas told me about plans to create a legitimate consulting firm that would help other family-run businesses transition away from criminal operations. "Use what I've learned to help others make the same choice," he explained. "Turn the knowledge into something constructive. You're really serious about going completely legitimate." "As serious as I can be. It's a process. Some parts of the business can't be untangled overnight. But in 5 years, maybe 10, I want the Valentasi name to mean something other than organized crime." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "And I want you beside me while I do it. If that's what you want." I looked at our joined hands, at Michael's watch on my wrist that I still wore every day, at the man who'd been my captor and became my partner. "Yes," I said, "that's what I want." We'd never have a simple love story. Our relationship would always be marked by the complicated circumstances of how we met, by Michael's ghost walking beside us, by the violent world we'd both been shaped by. But it would be ours, built on honesty and hard work, and the choice to keep choosing each other despite everything. Later, standing on Lucas's penthouse balcony looking out at the city lights, he pulled me close. "Michael was right," he murmured against my hair. "You are good for me. You make me want to be better." "He was right about you too," I replied, turning to face him. "You do protect me. But more than that, you see me, the real me." He kissed me then, and it tasted like future instead of past, like possibility instead of grief, like home. We had work to do, investigations to complete, businesses to reform, a relationship to build from complicated foundations. But standing there in Lucas's arms, Michael's watch warm against my wrist, and the city spread below us, I knew we'd figure it out. One day, one choice, one moment at a time.